Let's do this. All right. So this talk is called A Community for All, Impact Through Contribution. It's really a talk that's kind of dedicated to people that have some sort of a commitment to making the world a better place. And it was kind of a reflection for me going through some of my own experiences. My name is Adam Bergstein. I'm the VP of Engineering at Hook 42. Things that I like running, spend a lot of time with my family, craft beer, I love smoked meats, I've just kind of got that space of things. I also help run the Drupal Coffee Exchange, so I'm a big coffee nerd. And I'm kind of I would classify myself as a pragmatist. I look at things very pragmatically, and that's kind of how I see the world. It's very nice to be here today. So here's a brief outline of what I'm going to be presenting. I'm going to talk about the hero's journey, promoting impact, a future Drupal community vision, and then a call to action. So that's kind of at a high level how I've structured this. So let's start a bit with the hero's journey. Wow, right? We were just talking about this. Drupal, geez. Here we are. I think it's been around now 17, almost 18 years. 8 major versions. There's going to be a 9th one coming out real soon. Millions of installations of Drupal out in the world. Thousands of contributors across the globe. Philadelphia, obviously, it's great, but way, way bigger than this, right? And honestly, it's really impressive, right? It's incredibly impressive where we have come as a community. And I really believe we've done a lot of major things in the world, and we should celebrate that. But our work is far, far from complete. We have a long way to go. Learning Drupal is really difficult, I think. And who's ever seen this picture? I'm sure some of you have, yeah? And back in the day when this was actually made, tools like ModX and Joomla were these major players in the space, right? They're major CMSs that were competing with Drupal. But honestly, even though this image might be old, its statement of Drupal itself still kind of rings true, doesn't it? Right? And it should be really of no surprise to anybody who's ever looked at Drupal or played around with it, anybody that's in the room, that learning Drupal can be really hard. And it makes sense, right? Because Drupal itself is highly extensible, it's powerful, it's very flexible, and it is a digital system, right? So digital systems themselves can be very hard. In any given day, when you're working with Drupal, you may encounter, any of the following tools or technologies: PHP, Drush, Composer, CSS, JavaScript, HTML, Twig, testing frameworks, and that doesn't even cover it. So even if you know these technologies, of course, Drupal then kind of puts on its own conventions on top of all of that and does things in its own way, its own best practices that it needs to be observed and to be effective, right? So starting to use Drupal, I would say, is daunting. And this is long before people even dream of or think of giving back to the community, really. And I hope this picture right here is not evergreen. I hope we come back a few years from now and say, we've improved this. So a little adversity, kind of like the Drupal learning curve, it's not always a bad thing. In fact, it can kind of be an inspiration, right? The rewards of overcoming this kind of adversity, can afford new opportunities, can expand your horizons, can help you with your personal growth, and can really benefit your learning. And this is a picture of me back in the day, because my goal was I wanted to be a superhero, right? I wanted to be someone facing that adversity and really killing it, right? I'm going to save the world. Stories like the Ninja Turtles, Star Wars, Moana, The Matrix, and so many more, they follow this same kind of conventional narrative of a hero or a heroine overcoming adversity to become this hero that they are then known for, right? That the story is told. Joseph Campbell, he's an author, and he wrote a book called The Hero's Journey that talks about this symbolism and this journey that people go through to become a hero. And there's a very specific character arc that is reflected in this story that he talks about. And it's really a journey of like ups and downs and really deep transformation for the person themselves, for the hero. And the main outcome, though, is this transformation is really capable of having huge, significant impact in the world. So in this book, Campbell describes these steps, and the steps are split into these acts that is the character arc. So it's separation, descent, initiation, and then return. So it kind of comes back full circle. So who in the rooms ever saw Star Wars? I hope some of you. All right, good. I like these movies. I mean, I always kind of enjoyed them. And, you know, it's a classic story of good and evil, right? Everyone knows kind of the main gist of it. And, you know, let's, like, take one of those tangents for now. And, like, let's take Luke Skywalker, you know, one of the main characters in Star Wars. And let's kind of revisit the steps that he went through in Star Wars to kind of go through it. And you'll see how this kind of character arc plays out, right? So the first thing is separation. So I think, like, this was part of the story where Luke begins to see that he's a little bit different, and he was kind of discovered, you know, even from humble beginnings, discovered by Obi-Wan Kenobi. And at this point, he's kind of faced with making a choice of like, well, do I just leave these comfortable settings that I'm used to possibly do something that I'm like seeing could be different or new in the world? You know, he's having these feelings and thoughts, right? Descent is he's made this choice now, and he's decided, okay, I'm going to be something new. I'm going to try this new world. And he fully recognizes that, like, holy crap, this is a huge challenge, right? If I ever want to be a Jedi, this is so much work. It's, like, physically and mentally challenging. It's, like, a huge, big thing. And he's deeply regretting all these decisions that he decided to make, right? He's starting to, like, fall into, like, a really deep rut. Initiation is when you kind of, Luke then reaffirms his commitment back into the cause and digs his heels in, and he continues his training, and he challenges himself to become the best Jedi that he possibly can be. And then he ends up showing progress. He, like, grows and evolves. He, like, learns the Force, and he finally ends up succeeding at, you know, these battles against the Empire, right? And then finally is the return. So the final part of the character arc is when you've seen something and you can't go back, right? He's like grown, he's evolved, he's a brand new person, and it's transformational. And he goes, because his perspective is changed, he can't really see the world the same way that he used to. Does that make sense? Cool. So when we revisit this diagram, the real key part of this character arc, in my mind, is acknowledging that, for the hero's journey, is you may be facing this cliff, and it might be challenging, but there is a reward to that. And you can really grow, and you can evolve in doing so. And what are some of the rewards? Well, you might be solving some really hard problems in the digital space and be giving that work back to the community, right? And be known for that then, right? There are not always easy wins, even for the work that we're doing in Drupal. There are challenges, and they don't come without working hard. They don't come without facing adversity. They don't come with individual learning, or without individual learning. Lots of in-depth discussion and community stuff, and honestly, a little pain and suffering. But the end result, quite frankly, changes you, and it changes the world. And this is what I think Drupal offers. The next part of this talk is looking at how is the hero's journey really relevant in promoting impact. And I really do feel like contributing to free and open source software has the potential to change the world. It already does. It already has. It's pretty well known in my mind. But I think every single person is capable of doing this. And I want to challenge you to try to find your part in that. And so I want to share just a bit about my own journey. So the adventure begins. This is actually a picture, several years ago, probably not back when I started, but old enough. When I was young, I kind of thought that I could change the world by myself. I had this like really kind of boisterous attitude, maybe a little egotistical, and I was like, hey, you know, I can totally do this. But my superhero dreams kind of shifted into something more practical around software and building stuff for people. And I just graduated with a CS degree, and I was really into programming and problem solving. And at one point, I ended up building my own like CMS framework that I was like, yeah, I'm going to sell this to like 1 million people and be super rich and, you know, and all this stuff. It's going to be awesome, right? But, you know, I kind of learned really quickly that naivety didn't scale, right? Like there's, you know, it's like, that really is hard to do, you know, and solving, you know, these big problems and wanting to get rich and all this stuff was like not really cool. And, you know, it's proprietary and kind of closed source. You know, I didn't really understand open source at the time. And it's very hard to do anything by yourself, right? Things just don't scale. And that's the big lesson I kind of learned as I was looking at that. And I then went to work at Penn State, got to know this gentleman right here. And at one point in time, very, very early on in Penn State's Drupal Exploration, I was one of the first kind of projects there that actually we did that. And we did an evaluation of CMS systems and vendors and such for like a really big project that was, you know, World Campus, you know, that we were looking at using Drupal for. And there was a bunch of questions we started asking, you know, is the tool vibrant? How's like the out-of-the-box features? You know, how could we customize it? How could we leverage third-party integrations? Could we design it the way we wanted? How about responsiveness? Is it secure? There was just tons of factors, right, that we looked at. And honestly, Drupal checked all of the boxes, right? But it didn't check it in conventional ways, right? Like, if you say, is Drupal secure? And you look and they have a security team and they're working on patches and they have a process for that. It's much different than someone like Microsoft who goes and announces later, oh, we had a security vulnerability, we've already patched, upgrade your systems, right? There's a lot of different conventions that we had to like change the way we thought about it. But honestly, the answers were like, oh yeah, it does it, right? And to me, there was something really shocking about a community that mostly is volunteer-based, that like people are, you know, giving away their time and doing things largely for free and still have this kind of impact. I'm like, you know, my eyes kind of started opening up a bit. And it's like, what's the appeal, right? What is the appeal? How is this even possible? So Drupal kind of presented a deep philosophical rift for me, right? Why would thousands of people give away their time and their work for free? Why would they do that, right? Those that use the tool and give back to it make it even better. This is kind of the way that all of this has come around and why it's been successful. And there's tons of people using it, and that usage and that contribution drove maturity and growth and reach and capability for the tool. That's what caused it to be successful. And people contributed thousands of their solutions through core and contrib and just gave it away. Thousands more fixed bugs and stabilized the system and enhanced it from what it was, right? And the sheer scale of all of this is staggering to me. And the quote that I will be showing here in a second will really capture this. But this was really my moment of enlightenment, right? Is like, wow, okay, so this, just doing a review of this CMS kind of opened my eyes to an entire new world of potential that really I didn't think I wanted to turn back from. But there's more to this story. So small acts, when multiplied by millions of people, can transform the world. I think people think that they have to do something huge or significant to have an impact. That's not true. That's not how Drupal was built. It's everybody pitching in. Tiny investments, micro investments made across a huge community of people creates the scale that we see today. It doesn't take any one person doing it, right? And this shifted my entire perspective on what was possible and what impact I could have on my own within this open source model. So I decided to try it. And I'll tell you what, boy, it sucked at first. I mean, it sucked. It was hard. And I had major reservations, like major reservations. I mean, I thought even submitting a patch was kind of painful, quite frankly, right? And I lacked the practical experience to do this because I wasn't used to working within an open source community. I really had no confidence. I thought I was going to look stupid by doing something, and it was going to be right in front of the entire world to see, right? But I continued. I took the leap. I kept at it. I continued to grow my skills, took a few knocks on the way, but this happens. And I shared a lot of the knowledge that I gained, and honestly, over time, it just started to get easier. It became a little bit more natural, and I learned a lot just by sticking with it. It was kind of like Luke Skywalker's journey, except I'm not battling big evil people, right? And it's so much more than just a benefit to you, quite frankly. People throughout the world use Drupal. And by solving these problems and giving back, it means you're solving the problems for countless other people at the same time. So that, to me, is true impact. And that is world changing. I'll be honest, I mean, the perspective of giving back has sort of changed my life pretty drastically. I still push myself every day to do it, to, address challenges and learn and grow. But honestly, I started solving harder problems. I started porting modules from 7 to 8. I started giving talks. I started exploring non-technical areas and contributing in new and different ways. And I find all of it to be extremely rewarding. And this philosophy spreads. I learned from countless people and their contributions, and community members that routinely help me when I get stuck. I found mentors and reached out to people. But the key thing about this story is I didn't do anything by myself. Not even close. And you could see tons of pictures that I hang out with people, I see people, I talk to them, I learn from them. It has affected my life tremendously. I've made incredible friends in this community, and it's just been awesome. And honestly, I think this entire approach has really affected my socioeconomic status too. I mean, growing in the community has helped me to network with people. It's made me better qualified for jobs, and it's helped me provide for my family way more than I expected. So by contributing to something bigger, everything that I feel like I do has this potential for impact. I'm finally able to help people. I'm thrilled to hear that something that I've done has helped people or affected people. And none of this is really possible without like a community of people that think and act this way, right? Drupal never got here by people sitting on the sidelines and not doing this. So contribution is the cornerstone of making sure that Drupal is sustainable and vibrant. Make sense? While you know that having an impact in your own way can be special for the community, sometimes people are afraid to do so, and I certainly was. So there are many reasons for this. It could be a little bit of imposter syndrome. It could also be, people might think that they're inadequate or might be exposed if they try and they fail. But it also could be like kind of a protection mechanism for your public or professional persona. And I thought that Robert F. Kennedy spoke to this really elegantly with this quote: "Only those who dare to fail greatly can ever achieve greatly." So if we as people really seek the potential for impact, we need to not be afraid to fail. And there's an old Japanese samurai tradition called dying before going into battle that addressed this kind of fear. That they knew and recognized that the work that they did was dangerous. I mean, even the work that we do in the community, it's not dangerous. You're not physically going to get harmed, right? But the same kind of concept applies. They knew that one possible outcome of being a samurai could be, I'm going to get killed, right? I could get murdered. And so they came up with this exercise of dying before going into battle, which helped them imagine and ultimately accept the reality where any outcome could be possible with the work that they do, right? And they aligned with their mission, and they owned the potential for their work to promote a greater good. And this exercise freed one from their fear. It actually mentally changed their perspective. And it defined a realm of possibilities, if not a sense of detachment from a specific outcome, right? And we're all in some state of learning, and we all fail sometimes. I fail all the time. We need to ensure that we, as people, recognize this in ourselves and in others. We must foster environments that allow for failure to happen as a natural and evolutionary thing. Kelsie Hightower, who is very popular in the Kubernetes community, addressed this very directly for open source work. He said, don't be afraid of learning in public. The journey is more important than the destination. Boom. For you to get involved and get the most out of our community, you need to not be afraid to get involved. Thankfully, again, we're not talking about life and death, like that of the samurai. Failure presents the greatest opportunity for growth. And our community is a place that offers these opportunities. And it offers support and allows people to experiment, to learn, and to grow. You have to overcome this fear to unlock this potential in your own life. And you may die in battle, or maybe you survive and become a war hero. Maybe someday you cure cancer. That's impactful. But you can't imagine a new reality for yourself or our community without having the courage to move past these risks and your avoidance of it. All right. So I'm going to shift gears a bit now in the talk. I've talked about a personal reflection and my philosophy on contributing, but I want to shift gears now into more of some views in the community and how we might be able to evolve as a community to help support people more. So it's kind of my belief a bit that we need to make some changes, and some may seem significant, and that's okay. But let's talk about them. And maybe my future vision motivates you to do something that you care about or something that you might want to get involved in. And I'll also share some stories and kind of case studies of things that are already happening today to show that. So I want to state that change can be really hard, right? It's really hard to do, and it can be hard on people. I'm sure you all have seen that maybe in jobs or even in your personal lives. That change, man, it just brings out the best in people, right? It can be really hard. And I think I've seen in the community where, doing things too quickly can sometimes end up causing things to look sloppy or careless, right? But doing things too slow can make things feel stagnant. Did my thing go away? Oh, no, it's a lighting thing. This image here actually says change, but it's a grayscale image, so it's not showing up too elegantly from the projector. I apologize. So this can be really frustrating for people, right? Anytime change is kind of at foot, it just makes things really unsettled. But change is necessary. It's necessary now. It's necessary for us to be routinely changing and evolving because we need to stay relevant, right? This is just how this works. And change is constant. So with this framing, let me just propose that we accept some degree of uncertainty to proceed boldly. Let's think big. Let's try to challenge some assumptions that we've had. And let's not commit to getting things perfect right out of the gate, but rather let's be quick on our toes. Let's commit to learning and continuous learning and doing ongoing experiments, trying to help scale new ideas, and let's just focus on people's good intentions. How's that? Such a process, in my mind, really allows us to move forward now and into the future. Hopefully this shows up better. Oh, goodness. All right, maybe the projector went sideways. I guess you might have to just listen to me. Darn. I know it's painful. My philosophy on the future vision of Drupal is that if you all feel supported, you are what makes the Drupal community run. You all are what makes the Drupal community effective. It's us. It's the people. Right? And emphasizing you and your needs and make sure that you have the right pathways and the right support and the right opportunities to contribute back in your own way. That is what success looks like. And Albert Einstein has a quote for that that I think is pretty spot on. And you can't see it, obviously, but I will read it to you. We cannot solve our problems with the same level of thinking that created them, right? So our greatest innovations as a community have not been solved by those, or have been solved by those with an imagination to create a new future. It takes ideas, it takes new thinking, right? We need these new ideas, and we need everybody to have these opportunities to participate and bring their experience and perspective to the table. We need that. And we need to ensure that we as a community start prioritizing the needs of community members as people, right? Make it easier and lower these barriers of entry that people can participate in ways that they're comfortable doing so. And it is my belief that prioritizing this ensures that we as a community can continue to do great things. And quite frankly, it's because I believe everybody is capable of doing it. And I believe in all of you. So I've identified 4 areas of kind of what I would say can help us to align the needs of people. Clarity, simplification, inclusion, and innovation. Those are 4 buckets, okay? Let's start with clarity. So, in my opinion, there needs to be alignment. Like if we care about people, people need to feel committed, or they need to identify with what Drupal says is its identity or who we are as a community. But honestly, I really feel like a lot of this comes down to needing better clarity of who we are, right? And so a lot of the materials and things that we have today, they're sort of lacking, I think, right? And some are a little bit antiquated. And they're certainly not really concisely communicating who we are as a community. And so there are many recent efforts to help evolve some of this, and let's try to take a look at some of those. The first is back in Nashville, Dries announced the initial draft of these values and principles. And I kind of feel like they're still being worked on. So there's a process online of like giving feedback and having that reviewed. There's also like a committee that I think is reviewing some of that and making tweaks to these values and principles. But really, I think it requires a lot more involvement from people in the community to try and make sure that those are accurate and reflect what people want to see and open up conversations of where it's relevant. And there's, I think, a committee that is trying to work to process those that was announced, I think, by Rachel Lawson a little while ago. I haven't seen an update from them for a while, and the next piece is really like our community code of conduct. I think would be a key tool for understanding who we are and what we value as a community and how we like to work. Currently, the Drupal working group, the community working group, CWG, they're tasked with maintaining this code of conduct. They just announced a couple weeks ago that they're looking at making updates and refreshing it. So they're welcoming feedback for that. But they're also tasked with, doing a lot of conflict resolution, and that is a lot to ask from one, group, quite frankly. So maybe we could look to, either expand that group or evolve it, so split up some responsibilities. I think that would be very logical for that group. And they're also looking for more people. So if anybody is interested in participating, they would like to expand their membership, and that's a really great way to give back. Governance is really the last piece, and it's one of these things that I think people don't really pay close attention to, but when it doesn't work, it's extremely catastrophic, right? And governance is an overall way of looking at processes and structures of how the community runs and how it operates. And we had a big incident a few years ago in the community that caused a lot of people to be concerned about how the governance was run in Drupal. And I created a group called the Governance Task Force that was tasked with evaluating this governance and making recommendations to move the governance forward, which that led to delivery of like about a 40-page document that kind of read a bit like a strategic plan of the community of like how can we evolve, how can we distribute leadership and have non-single points of failure, new groups and mentalities, new philosophies to look at. And that was a global task force, so we had people from all across the globe participating in those discussions from the community. It's pretty cool. So if you're curious to learn more, definitely go give that a read or take a look. There is a Cliff Notes version. I don't know how many people have actually read all of the 40 pages. It's a lot. I think one thing to be mindful of when we're looking at any sort of future vision for the community is bear in mind that, like, one of the major challenges is the sheer scale of what is happening in the community. We are huge. We're a big, big group. And it's kind of like an elephant. Like, I was having a conversation with George Demet one time, who works at Palantir, and he's like, it's an elephant. You can only, at one point in time, see one part of the elephant. There's an entire other side of the elephant that is going, and you don't even know what's happening back there, right? The sheer scale of what we in Drupal do globally, it's staggering, right? So you can really, it's very hard to know exactly what is happening at any point in time. There's no one that purely can concisely say what is Drupal, right? What is happening in Drupal. There's thousands of things that brand and label themselves as Drupal, from groups and events and technical products, and people identifying as community members and saying, like on LinkedIn, I'm a Drupal developer, right? We have very few standards around what Drupal's namesake actually is and what it stands for and how we use it. And this is much, much deeper than branding. And I think it's really confusing, like especially for people that associate their efforts with Drupal itself. If someone sees something questionable that is happening that's related to Drupal or has Drupal's name on it, I think that could be really damaging to the community, right? You know, like Drupal Political Action Group or something, right? Like, come on, you know. We don't really have clarity around what efforts are aligned with our identity, which ones match our values and principles, and we can't really guarantee that everything that is labeled Drupal adheres to these standards. And this is a big challenge in my mind. So how do you start to look at it? I really do feel like one of the challenges is around decentralization, right? People may be working on these really amazing ideas throughout the community, but there isn't always a broad level of community visibility. There isn't one central way that people can advertise what they're doing or talk about it. And as a largely distributed community, this happens all the time, right? I mean, how many of you know what is happening in Bangalore, India right now, right? I don't. So for us to be able to scale and evolve, it's my opinion that we need to start to begin to raise some awareness and centralize efforts of what is happening on a global scale. And it needs to be much easier to understand and identify what constitutes the elephant and which is making up our entire Drupal ecosystem. I really feel like the Drupal Association has a responsibility in some of this. They are right now probably our only example of something that is centralized right now. And they offer a lot of various types of support outside of just being a volunteer community. So as a simple example, I mean, you know, it costs money to run Drupal.org, right? And it costs money to build new features and extend things in our community at that level and at that scale. And our community members and those participating in specific ways, they need other types of assurances from like legal support and guidance, training, you know, and they need clear connections to make sure that they have that bridge back to the community. And this is really where I see the Drupal Association able to step in. A lot of community members have been critical of them, and I think that in some respects can be fair, but part of it is our perspective on it as well. I think we view their work as an expectation. We say, hey, you must do this. Like, this is your job. This is your role. But honestly, you know, we don't always really seem to recognize how important it is for us to support them and what they're doing. The work that they do is not free. We all need to make sure that we help donate and offset the cost of this work so that they are able to do the things that we expect them to do. And we wonder why they're not doing more to lower the cost of DrupalCon or to build more tools for the community to be effective, but yet we're not really willing to even give them $25 to do it, right? The reality is that we really need to change our perspective from, instead of it being a donation, it needs to be an investment. We need to look at that as we are investing back in the community, because if they don't, really the whole community suffers. And it's not to suggest or say that they don't have room to improve. I know they can. But honestly, this gets back to the fact that we need to continue to build ways to have some sort of a strategic plan to guide that and centralize efforts that are largely decentralized today. If their mission is to serve the community, there definitely are some walls between the community and the DA, but really it all comes down from a lack of a strategy, a joint strategy for them to execute on. So we need that to change for their mission to be more clear and more effective for them to serve us. And the task force proposal that we put forth suggested that. So we said, hey, you really should have some way of bridging a strategic plan for both the DA and the community. All right, let's move on to simplification. So I've identified this as another cornerstone of where we need to evolve as a community. Let's look at some things. First, let's start with the JavaScript modernization initiative. So people that are unfamiliar with Drupal really have a hard time using it, right? Like it's got all these its own conventions and names and ideas and concepts that are totally foreign, right? So it's my belief that like our current state of where Drupal is today, they were born and stem from our technical roots as a community, our technical progress. But those that are using Drupal are not technical, right? They're not. So the ways that we have looked at things conventionally, they're not serving that, right? And I think that the JavaScript modernization initiative is a great example of how Drupal has shifted into more of a usability first perspective for new things. So they're rebuilding the admin UI and like the editing screens of like changing content and moving things. Here's a screenshot. And I think it has sort of evolved Drupal's perspective on that. And I think that's a largely positive thing. And not only that, but it's actually being developed with best of breed tools too, that are way outside the Drupal norms. So things like React.js and Nightwatch.js, it's helping Drupal evolve more into the best of breed that it is trying to be advocating for. And it's leveraging cool new front-end technology that exposes our community into new areas and new ecosystems that right now we're not, right? The React.js community right now is huge. That's a whole new potential area of people that might want to go and pitch in on Drupal now. Another example of simplicity that I think is really key is the documentation initiative. And this one I think is still evolving. But if people have time and interest in contributing, it's not just technical, right? So there's other ways that can have huge impact about updating even our community resources online. And try to make it to, the whole goal of this initiative is to make things as easy to find as possible and as accurate and up-to-date and relevant, right? Drupal is notorious for having antiquated and sprawled documentation, right? I mean, every single major version of Drupal, we have to rewrite things, doesn't keep up with all the changes of the minor releases and all this other stuff. But honestly, people need to work at it, right? So, and it's extremely hard. And I think this has to become a stronger priority for us as a community because it is a huge barrier of entry. I mean, massive, right? If you're going and you're Googling something and you're like, views in Drupal, and you're looking at something that might have been done from Drupal 6 and doesn't even apply to Drupal 8, and you're using Drupal 8, I don't know, right? So there's all kinds of practical examples of why this needs to be improved. This initiative, this documentation initiative, was started by Matthew Grasmick, and it's not just technical, right? So this can be expanded, I think, in a lot of ways, the philosophy of it, into any area of using Drupal, to contributing to Drupal, and all this other stuff that apply to all aspects of our community. And it's not just an accuracy, it's actually a usability perspective too. We need to make sure that as part of this documentation initiative, it's not, hey, is this information correct? It's, is this information clear? Can people use it? Can people grok it? So it is definitely, to me, a huge opportunity for creating impact and scale and a good place to invest time. So emphasizing usability, which you can hear is kind of a key theme of what I think is important for us to scale as a community, kind of fits into other areas as well. So let's look at like a new community site or like a refreshed community site effort, which is actually happening, right? There are some examples of this happening today. I think this can help us to centralize information, right? It can help us to post and clarify things like our mission, our vision, our values and principles, our strategic plan. I think we can help to make groups and events and efforts that are happening in the community, like initiatives, more clear and centralized, right? Present things in a logical and easy to grok way. But more importantly, I feel like an updated community site is so critical for things like onboarding and mentorship, right? When you have that really humming, that's when community members feel supported. And it's so, so important that we have those pathways defined, and it's really, really clear for people to get on board and to use. And then I think most importantly too, because we're global, all of this effort has to be done in multiple languages. It just has to be, right? We have this really unfair advantage, especially in the United States, right? That everything is in English. We've all supported English, and that is not fair. And we are really, really severely limiting our potential impact in the world by just having everything in English. So it has to be multilingual. I mean, if it's not, I feel like that's a massive waste of opportunity. All right. I'm going to shift gears into my third bullet in this section called inclusion, right? Inclusion is it's a really big topic for me personally, and I want everyone to feel like they have an opportunity to participate, and I want this community to recognize and acknowledge contribution in all of its forms, not just commits. So why inclusion? Well, I kind of felt that Chris Sims, who tweeted about this, kind of had a good quote. One important trait of high-performing teams is that they use their diversity to come up with better solutions, right? That's why it's important. Diversity and inclusion are critical to community sustainability. It's critical. Every single person has their own perspective that they are capable of adding into our greater community effort. Every experience people have had, everything that they've learned, all of this kind of shapes people in unique and different ways, right? I actually read a book recently that said every single person has 13 million unique traits. That's a lot, right? We need challenged in new and unique ways to move in new directions, and we need better solutions to evolve. That's just a fact. And sustainability is not really where this story ends. Diversity and inclusion is the right thing to do. It is just the morally correct thing to do. We have such a massive opportunity to serve underrepresented people and help improve their lives. It's just the right thing to do, honestly. This needs to be open to these folks that need it the most in an effort to better promote equality and fairness throughout all of our global community. It's just important. So how do we help foster and improve inclusivity in our community? Dries just talked about this in the Seattle keynote in his Dries note. So I think there's definitely a lot of alignment from the leadership of Drupal. And let's just start by acknowledging, as I said, that our community is daunting. So it's huge. So where do you start and how do you even begin? I really feel that some of our biggest areas of opportunity to grow is around community onboarding. We need to really help people start their journey, right? We need as much support and as much help as possible. And there's a similar need for existing community members that want to start contributing or find new and unique ways that they want to extend or expand into, right? So there's a lot of overlap there. Members of our community have repeatedly shared how impactful it is to have a mentor that guides you in your journey, right? They let you ask silly questions without doing it publicly. They help you identify opportunities or get networked into the right things. They find these connections for you to build and grow your rapport. And they help you when you get stuck. This builds trust and helps establish a human connection that can be very hard for a distributed remote community. The closest thing that we have to this initiative right now is the Drupal mentoring program, which is led by Ellie Ludwigson, who is awesome, by the way. And she does a great job. And this is already a great program, but honestly, it needs way more participants and needs to expand in new and unique ways and grow and get more people involved. We need to help build this connection. That's what's important to me. Mentoring needs to have a much stronger presence in our community onboarding and be represented as a prominent pathway to get any sort of help or guidance that is needed based on people's needs. Even pairing people up would be a good start, right? And this pathway needs to exist directly from the new community site or the updated community site, because I feel like that's the really clear entryway. And expanding this offering into some more active engagement. I know some folks are familiar with the term of like a help desk, right? Where people are there to like take requests and listen and help triage things. That does really nothing more that help to seek and find opportunities for people and get them the help that they need. This would be immensely powerful at reducing the barrier of entry to the community. It has a nice personal touch. Community members also have shared how these in-person experiences are helping them to feel connected. So we do really well at camps and meetups, but these efforts need to be better expanded across the globe. We need better policies and standards that can help people from all languages and backgrounds be able to participate so that English is not a barrier, as I said. And we're starting to see these groups begin to form in other areas. So there's new groups that are forming in like Germany and the Netherlands and India that are providing more local, regionalized support for people to help address their unique needs that are really specific to their areas and regions, right? And I feel like that's a really great way. They're calling them local associations, by the way, if you hear that term. That's what they're branding themselves as. And this is really a great way to also elevate something up more broadly of needs from these local associations into the larger association. All right, so let's talk about some stories. Like, what are some people doing today that I think are really great? So, and I'm running low on time due to the technical issue. I'm going to try to blaze through this a bit, but so Amy June Heinlein, she's a really good example. She left a career as a hospice nurse. Today, she goes to camps. She gives entry level, like, how do you do contribution training in the community. She's done a fantastic job of basically like creating new contributors and nurturing them and having like the resources that they need to be successful. And she does this at camps and events. She's given it online. It's pretty cool. Kevin Thal, who you see here today, I mean, imagine the impact that he's had. He's recorded all of these camps and these events and these sessions, right? He's put it up in public ways that someone from the whole other end of the world can sit and watch my talk. I don't think they want to, but God forbid. But I think it's been really great. I mean, imagine the impact that he has had. How many people have watched the recordings that he's done? It's really great. And he won the Aaron Winboard Award in 2018 to be recognized for that. This year's award winner just recently announced is Leslie Glynn. She also has an amazing story. Leslie, she shows up. Like that's her best contribution. She helps out with a lot of the events that happen in New England. She mentors every event that she possibly can. She shows up. She helps people. She's amazing. She's an amazing person. And really, her volunteerism is admirable. Okay, so one of the last parts here is really around innovation. And this might be kind of more taboo a bit, but we really need to look at innovative ways that we can expand as a community, because we've already had a lot of technical innovation and good problem solving, and we need to keep that. But we need to also look at other unique ways around the community. It doesn't just need to be technical, And so I'm going to give a few examples of things. Probably the question that I ask myself sometimes, and I think a lot of people do, is Drupal Legacy. Has it hit a point where it's legacy, right? So this image here, it's been around a long time, right? We're now getting towards our 9th major version, right? Is it perceived as a legacy tool? I don't know. That's a question you might need to ask. But this is the Octoverse. It's GitHub's chart from the last several years of the growth of projects and and everything like that. Now there's not any hard numbers attached to this chart, but you can actually see that PHP itself is kind of going down. JavaScript-based projects are going up. Python's pretty steady. Java's pretty steady. But PHP is still pretty popular, right? But I mean, Drupal is largely PHP-based, right? And I think that the shift from 7 to 8 was very significant, right? And it showed that we're capable of doing some big changes, but I don't really feel like we're done. I feel like we need to keep going. And I think the Octoverse gives a pretty clear motivation as to why we need to do that. And I see tremendous opportunity for Drupal to evolve in new and unique ways that are beyond just PHP. And we have to do that because we have to be appealing for more people. I would think we want to shed the perception that we're legacy, right? One way that I kind of thought of that I think is sort of crazy and definitely would take a good bit of work, but definitely could be possible, is really around replacing Drupal's specific theming system with something that's Gatsby or React based. I think that would be a huge opportunity for us to get into an entirely new ecosystem of people and adopt a best of breed solution that really would make Drupal much more vibrant and sexy, as I like to say. Right? Because a lot of people love this. And we already are evolving too. I just want to be clear, things like Layout Builder and some of the new features that are being added, they're definitely helping Drupal to evolve. So I think a lot of this is perception. And I don't want to be misunderstood on that. Because a lot of people are working very hard to keep Drupal relevant and do great things. And I think that is occurring. But I do feel like we have opportunities to grow in new and distinct ways that might be more appealing for more people to be a part of our efforts. I do think that William Plomer has a quote that kind of captures the essence of evolving in new and different ways. Creativity is the power to connect the seemingly unconnected. Innovation isn't just about ideas that I have. It's about ensuring that we have welcoming and supportive ways to escalate and scale those ideas across anybody. And this is how the creativity and the vibrance help Drupal to stay vibrant and relevant in the world, right? And all of you are the driver behind this. So really, we need to foster some philosophy of taking these ideas and scaling them so that people are capable of bringing their experience fully and completely. So we need a much improved way to define pathways for people to scale their ideas, right? It's not enough just to have an inclusive community or to promote that, but we also need to be able to take that and harness it and have new and exciting innovations that come up, right? We do a really good job of trying to promote diversity and inclusion, but then we need the way to harness it. So right now our tools and processes are a bit lacking in this area. We need, for a community of this size, we've not really done a great job of helping people to scale their ideas, I think. So we need to look at that as a way of, kind of evolving. Right now it's kind of this weird concept of like posting things in issue queues and Twitter and generating community discussions. Also, knowing the right people is very helpful and important for scaling ideas. But it's really not properly defined, and quite frankly, it doesn't scale. In the governance proposal, we described a new group to help solve these problems. I don't think there's any clear answers or clear solutions, but we really need to be able to define this, and we proposed a new group dedicated to governance that would help take pilot ideas and help to put the right processes in place, because it's a ways and means of how we work. It's not just, some idea in an issue queue, right? And I hope that this can lead to, distributing authority. I hope it can also lead to scaling and creating new leaders in the community, and also to help us be able to make larger decisions that could have broad impact. One thing that I want everybody to be mindful of, and they do, but I think it's a good reminder, is I want everybody to have fun. And this is underrepresented. We talk a lot about, battling around technical commits and the right way to do things. And I want to just kind of step back and say, let's have a good time. Let's recognize each other. This photo here is of Jam and Greg Anderson at DrupalCon Baltimore, and I call this the meeting of the mustaches, right? Like the two of them, boom, like the ethos hitting the world at the same time, right? We need to enjoy each other. We need to celebrate our wins. We need to celebrate our diversity and inclusion and celebrate who we are and really, kind of honor that. I want to see people smile more at events, give each other hugs, recognize each other. It's just good. It's just healthy. And Lindsay Jackson, who was on the task force, she's a community member from Australia. She's been trying to help tell these stories for people and post these Drupal stories of, kind of use cases of people, and it's been really great. But this is a good way for us to really make this connection and have a good time. And this is well beyond, just the commits. Another kind of quirky thing that we've done is really the Drupal Coffee Exchange. We do that at some events, and we also do it remotely. So you compare up quarterly with people and send each other a bag of local roast. Fancy that. I know a lot of people love caffeine in the community, so this is kind of a quirky silly idea. I also have stickers if anybody wants some. Yep. So, hey. We just did our second DrupalCon in-person BOF. We had like 30 people show up with pounds of coffee. We bought coffee, had cream sitting out and everything. It was really cool and fun, and people just geeked out on coffee. It was kind of cool. All right, so call to action. It's my belief that we need to be evolving. We need to be changing for our community to stay relevant. I've already shared some ideas. I hope they resonated with you somehow. Some of the changes may seem significant. I apologize, but I mean, honestly, let's think bigger, right? Kind of one good closing perspective here is that, you know, there's really so much potential behind any contribution. We shouldn't really limit that or anything like that. You never know when a tiny investment on your part will make and have a gigantic impact on somebody else. You just don't, right? And, you know, it's kind of called like the butterfly effect, right? You could just do something small and then all of a sudden like it turns into this big thing. And I hope you find your story. I hope you write your story, you know, because everyone's story is different. And, you know, what is your story going to be? You know, and I hope you look back and you reflect on your journey. And I hope you understand that the community needs you as part of this journey. And we're here to help you. I think everybody really is committed to that too. So you got this. Go do big things. Thank you so much.